Well, hello, friends. Welcome back. I'm sorry it's been a while. This is the longest period of time that I've been away from these since the beginning of the year, which may be a relief to you, or maybe you were sad about it. I'm not sure. I was out in Ohio for a few days, got back last night. So I want to talk a little bit more about Judges. We're actually going to be completing the book of Judges tomorrow in our regular reading, but I'm just going to do today, talk mostly about Gideon, which is way early in the book of Judges. And then tomorrow I'll do kind of a wrap up of just anything that I want to mention about the book of Judges, because we're starting Ruth here on Saturday. So moving forward, it seems like quickly, but we're going to soon get to these sort of historical books, which we're going to be in for a long time, like months. Right? We got First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, and there's a lot of course, great stuff in here. Samuel's particularly pretty well action packed. So we'll see. We'll just take it right as it comes. What have you guys been thinking about Judges? Interesting book of the Bible, right? Some fascinating stuff. I think I mentioned that I preached this last Sunday on this, which is on the same, not my personal Facebook feed, but the same other channels. I preached on Deborah. So if you want to hear more about Deborah, I recommend checking out our Sunday gathering, probably about halfway through or so. You can just kind of fast forward until you find where I start preaching, and share a lot about Deborah. I love Deborah's story. She's one of the really positive figures in the book of Judges, and not all are. Gideon is kind of a complicated figure, like so many. We'll take a look at him a bit today. And then let's talk about some other things next tomorrow. We'll kind of wrap up Judges. So let's look at. I know you guys read this now a while ago in the reading, and so if you're behind a little bit, maybe you're tracking with me here, Gideon. I'm not behind. I finished the book of Judges, but I'm just going to talk about certain things here. So let's talk about Gideon, chapter 6, Judges. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Remember, do not leave the book of Judges without understanding this pattern, right? This cycle of God's people are unfaithful, right? They abandon God. He allows someone else, another nation, to kind of have their way with them. The Israelites, cry out to God because of the difficult circumstances. God raises up a judge who's often more of a military leader. Although we saw with Deborah, she actually also provided that kind of, dealing with disputes and things the way that like Moses did, the way that kings would, the way that elders in the city gates would kind of help to decide things like that. And so oftentimes, like with Gideon, these people are sort of militarily involved figures that help to defeat the enemy. And then there's peace in the land. And then God's people go right back to, as we see here, evil in the eyes of the Lord. And so this cycle repeats itself again and again. So understand the cycle will help you understand Judges. And again, we want to have big picture. We want to have an idea with what's going on in every book of the Bible. That's a goal. Please take it, accept it. It's possible. You can do it, but you have to want to do it, or you might not get there. Okay. Verse 2, because the power of the Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Right. So they're hiding. So this is a bad situation for them. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza and did not spare a living thing for Israel. So the author here is painting a picture, right? This is a bad situation. This is a hard situation. In verse 6, Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. Remember, this is an essential feature of the cycle in the book of Judges. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet. This is a little bit of a twist in the typical narrative. Now we saw with Deborah, she's a prophet. But most of the judges are not specifically called prophets, and this prophet is unnamed here. He's not. It's not Gideon. It's a prophet. Interesting. So what will this prophet say? Verse 8. He sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says." Remember, the primary role of a prophet is not to predict way future detailed events. It's to speak what God wants the people to know. And sometimes it involves the future. Sometimes it involves the present. And we'll see that going on here. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. "I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians." This is not new information, but it's forgotten information, right? They forgot who they are. They forgot who God was and what God did. And so, as I've just pointed out again and again and again and again, God's rescue of them from Egypt is a major theme in the narrative, and God's provision, right? "I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you. I gave you this land." Right? "I rescued you. I gave you a place to live. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you now live. But you have not listened to me." And again, God's, the word of God through this prophet is not this detailed list. You broke all these little rules. Well, I'm sure they did that too, these little commands. But idolatry is the big thing. They've turned away. They've worshipped other gods. They've not been faithful to God, not even in detail, but in a broad way, have turned away. So the narrative with Gideon, and we'll spend most of the moments that we have today in this introductory kind of story here. And it's Gideon's such a good narrative story to tell. And we could spend more time with it. Again, I want to know what your thoughts are about this story, about Judges in general. Tomorrow's going to be our last day. So if there's anything about Judges that you want me to talk about, leave a comment on that today so that I see it before tomorrow, and I'll talk about it in the video that I do, hopefully sometime tomorrow afternoon. So an angel of the Lord. This is a fascinating thing. We saw this with Abraham, right? With Jacob, the angel of the Lord, the messenger of the Lord, and then sometimes it's called later the Lord, and it's kind of like this, for us, kind of hard to pin down thing, but this is somehow God's mediated representative presence, or something. But something significant that's going on here. Angel of the Lord came and sat down under an oak that belonged to Joash, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a wine press. It's not normally where you thresh wheat, to keep it from the Midianites. Okay, so Gideon is hiding. He's, it's just an illustration that they're not on top. They're not in control of the situation here, as we'll see Gideon point out here in a minute. So this is interesting. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Right? And there's an irony here, because Gideon's hiding in this wine press doing the threshing, but he's called, number one, this reminder, this major theme throughout Scripture, God with us, right? Later, Emmanuel with Jesus, and when Jesus gives a great commission, "I'll be with you always," the Holy Spirit comes and empowers. But we saw this isn't new in the New Testament; it's deeper. But the whole book of Leviticus and the tabernacle, God's presence among, God's leading through them through the wilderness, we saw, right? God's provision, that this is who God is. But God specifically is with Gideon. He wants to remind him, even though, as Gideon will say, Sure doesn't feel like that, God. And he calls him mighty warrior. He's almost calling Gideon into this, I think, as much as saying what he already is, right? The idea that God sees something. Your guy, yeah, Judd named one of your sons after Gideon, so you must be looking at his more favorable aspects because he's got Gideon in the Bible has a little bit of both. So it's a fun story. I don't know too many Gideons in real life, so it's a cool name. You're not gonna probably have a lot of competition there with that one. So God is with you, mighty warrior. He says, even though he's hiding in the wine press. But Gideon has a bone to pick with God, or at least with that declaration particular. He says, I'm in verse 13 now. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us, right? If God's with us, why is our situation so lousy? Yeah, why are we being oppressed? I like Gideon because he had faith in God, but no faith in himself. Okay. He doesn't start off seeming to have a lot of faith with God. Ultimately, he will. He's such a good story. I love it. So anyway, pardon me. So if you're with us, what's up? Doesn't feel like that's the case. If you being with us involves our success, then what's going on here? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about? Okay, so they know about the stories. When they said, "Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?" Okay, so we heard these stories about God doing all these miraculous things, and the prophet just reminded them of that. But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. So doesn't take a lot of ownership there for why that may be the case, but their perspective. And again, remember in the wilderness, there's this thing about where's God? Is God against us? In this case, maybe not so much God against, but God doesn't feel very present. I mean, we could definitely draw some preaching points for how we feel sometimes in given moments here. So the Lord turned to him and said, "Go." This is a great line. "Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" Okay. A little bit of maybe Moses in here and his reluctance to go. But it's interesting that this messenger here of the Lord, and now, and I'm not researching these. I didn't do different translations to see, if I should be bringing in different vocab for some of these words here. So I'm just taking the English text as it is here. But we see this shift in a sense. I don't know if it's a shift or just what it is, but angel of the Lord to now in verse 16, the Lord answered. Okay. This seems to be kind of the way that these narratives work as we've seen in other instances so far. So he doesn't really directly answer Gideon's accusation, if you will, of abandonment or whatever, but he redirects him. It seems to me, right? Go. So hey, now the Lord has abandoned him, and so the Lord says to him, "Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand." So there's the solution. Midian's the problem. Gideon, you're going to be the solution. With God's big help, right? In that situation. Am I not sending you? Pardon me, verse 15, my Lord, Gideon replied. How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. So, Jed, as you just mentioned, that's a great example of Gideon not having a lot of faith in himself and his ability to do that. Of course, that was never the plan, to for him to have the power in and of himself necessarily to do it, but it's going to be God's saving. That's of course always the big story in the stories as these go. The Lord answered, "I will be with you." Right, I will be with you. I said, "I will be with you, Gideon." Go in the strength that you have. When your strength falls short, I'm going to start preaching. Right, God's strength is what gets the job done. And man, this could be some preaching in here today, but I'm going to hold back a little bit. I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites. Okay. Verse 17, Gideon replied, "If," like when God says do it, he says, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it's really you talking to me." I don't know who else could be talking to him. But in any case, please do not go away until I go and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, again, we're into just the Lord now. And the Lord said, "I will wait until your return." Guys, I love, maybe you don't, maybe some of you don't love this, but I love God's patience with people. Now, sometimes God gets hot about things, but it seems to me that when people ask God for things, wanting to believe, but have a hard time getting there, that there's often a lot of grace and provision for people like that. So when the angel comes to Mary, you're going to, you're going to be, I'm very roughly paraphrasing right? Basically, you're going to have Jesus. She says, "Well, how will this be so?" So she's not, I would argue, not asking in doubt, asking in faith, but kind of wanting to know more there. Thomas, right? Doubting Thomas, is not necessarily affirmed for his faith. Probably would have been better for Gideon if he had just said, "I don't need any of these fleeces. I'm just going to go." That would have been great. But God does what Gideon asks. Man, I'm just getting this picture here of a God who works with us. Doesn't berate us necessarily for our lack of 100% faith out the gate, but says, I'll work with you. I'll meet you where you're at, to use that phrase that we sometimes use. And so the Lord said, I'll wait for you until you return. So Gideon went and he prepared this offering. I don't want to belabor this stuff too much, but let me just say verse 21, angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of the staff that was in his hand. So this is not like this esoteric, like disembodied thing. It doesn't seem like, right? There's a staff and touching. Interesting. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread. This reminds us of the burnt offerings, right, in Leviticus that go up, or even that I think Noah makes after the flood. That represents this kind of wholehearted giving over. But the fire consuming also looks forward to like Elijah, right? And that this just the consuming God is a consuming fire. But this is certainly quite a sign. And then the angel of the Lord disappeared. Okay, so I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think this would be enough for me if I was in this situation. But Gideon's going to need a little bit more as we go on here. So this is interesting that now in this moment, though, so I'm in like verse 22, still in chapter 6. Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord. He exclaimed, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." So that he's afraid there's something wrong. But the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." And so we've seen this already, this idea or this theme of the intensity of God's presence is something that's consuming, can lead to death. That was true even for the high priest. When he entered on the Day of Atonement, that the incense had to be there, so he couldn't. So he had this some sort of a buffer still, even though he was in there. When Moses wanted, God, show me your glory. He said, you can see, you can kind of see me going, but you can't get the full on. And yet Moses has a relationship with God that others don't have. They're afraid that if they did that, they would die. So interestingly, just how much this thing about God's presence extends out because I have more self-confidence than Gideon. That may be true, although I also wasn't invited into a battle, so who knows what I would do there. I'd probably be afraid too. So anyway, the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You're not going to die." I mean, he's the one that came to speak to Gideon, so it'd be kind of weird to fault him there. But anyway, he has somewhat of a revelation in this moment, right? Like, oh wow, this is the real deal here. So Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and called it "The Lord is Peace." To this day, whenever that day is, it stands in Ophrah. Okay, so the same night, the Lord said to him, "Take a second bull." So this is big. Oh man, I don't know. I feel like I need an hour to talk about Gideon. Oh, I guess I don't need to do a play-by-play, but I love it so much. It's such a good story. And I do want to talk about this. This is actually really, really important. This part of chapter 6. So take a second bull from your father's herd. In verse 25, tear down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. So, guys, what's going on here is we're seeing the pervasiveness of idolatry, the pervasiveness of the worship practices of the people around them into the Israelite people. Gideon's father has his own altar to these gods, little g, and we'll see more about their response. That will just tell us how pervasive the idolatry is. It's not like even secret. It's not hidden. It's right out there. And so again, it kind of makes sense of the story. It's not just like with the people here. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, little sin. Oh, didn't mean to do that. No, this is outright. We're just incorporating Canaanite worship practices, and we're not even sorry about it. And when you mess with it, we're gonna get agitated, as we'll see happens with Gideon's crew here. So tear those down, build the proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on top of this high places is kind of a deal. Using the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. This is part of the worship practices. So you can see what God thinks about this. Anyway, take the wood of the pole, offer a second bull on it as a burnt offering. So burn it up. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord told him, but because he was afraid of his family and the townspeople, he did it at night rather than in the daytime. Okay. In the morning when the people got up, there was Baal's altar demolished and the Asherah pole beside it cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. So how are they going to feel? Are they going to say, "Thank God, Gideon, somebody had the courage to get this idolatry out of our camp, because we know this is bad news and this is why we're being oppressed by the Midianites"? No. So who did this? They investigated. Somebody apparently saw it. They figured it out. They were told Gideon, son of Joash, did it. So what's their response going to be? Verse 30. The people of the town demanded of Joash, "Bring out your son. He must die because he has broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." Guys, think about this. This is tragic. This is the state of the union of the nation of Israel, of God's people. Not only are they compromised, some of them broadly compromised, but when somebody comes along and wants to do what they know should be done, it's obvious. It's the baseline of all expectations. This is at the absolute top of no idolatry, right? Worshiping God alone. When they did this, they want to kill him. Wow, this is wholesale. They're sold down the pike of compromise 100%. This is later what will be called spiritual prostitution, right? Unfaithfulness to God in the nth degree. Here it is. It's right here already. And so God, this is the state. This is the everyone does what's right in their own eyes, right? And I guess in the eyes of those around him. So Gideon's dad he's got some wisdom here, even though this was his deal. So whatever. Verse 31. He replied, "Are you going to plead Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal is really a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." So because Gideon broke down the altar, they gave him the name Jerub-Baal, saying, "Let Baal contend with him." And this name sticks, actually, and it means something like that. Let Baal contend with him. So interesting stuff. I really would like to know more about Joash, and I really want to speculate here, even though that's dangerous. But what I want to speculate is, is he really has he known better the whole time, but just compromised himself? And when his son had the courage to actually do this, is he glad for it? Like sometimes when we're in a situation where we're compromised, we know we're not doing what's God's right. We're complicit in it. But when somebody stands up and does what's right, I didn't have the courage to do that. I got issues, but I'm actually glad somebody did. And now that they did, things are changing. I don't know. Again, I'm speculating there a little bit, I admit, but he doesn't join them. Could just because he loves his son Gideon too, right? So it could be a lot of reasons here. So now we're getting down to it, and again, this time in, I'm not going to do a lot of details, but already I just want to kind of point out these couple of things, maybe for some reflection of, God calling Gideon into something that he wasn't in and of himself, or didn't feel in and of himself, and also the situation. I really don't want to leave Judges, and it gets worse from here in a lot of cases. I don't want you to leave Judges without seeing how dark of a time this was, in a sense, right? How compromised, and it's still, God's still at work. We've seen that. We've seen some great stuff. We saw Deborah. Wow, great story there. But yeah, the state of the situation is bad. It's very, very, very compromised. All right. So all the other people, the Midianites, the Amalekites, I'm in verse 33 now. Eastern peoples, they joined forces. They crossed over the Jordan. And they camped in the valley of Jezreel. So they're getting ready to go up against Israel. The Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent messengers from Manasseh. Basically, anyway, get together. So, all right, verse 36. God said to Gideon, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised." All right. Now, Jed, if you're still hanging with me, I'm going to knock on Gideon a little bit here. Not your son Gideon, this Gideon. God, if you meant what you promised, do this. If God promised, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised. Again. What is ideal, and then what is the human situation that God works with, and in this story, without even complaining about it, if you will, without even getting mad about it. So I think that, again, ideally, Gideon would have responded to God's promise, to God's word, in faith. But hey, this is reality. We are human. We are not as people. We are not as strong as we think we are. Our faith, when it comes sometimes when the rubber meets the road, isn't that whatever by my hand, because I don't think you can do it by my hand. I'm not good enough. I'm not the warrior that you think I am. But you're still doubting God, right? Because God said, I'm going to do it through you. But I get that. I get it. Yes. He's doubting himself. And I guess, it takes a while in the biblical narrative. We kind of have to, I guess, in each generation, redo this thing that it's never about our strength, but we do. I mean, yeah, we default back to that. Well, I don't think I can do it. Well, yeah, maybe you can't. Heck, maybe God's choosing people purposely that can't, so that, right, we know who gets the glory, and it's not usually us, or it ought not to be. But yeah, I get that. All right. So he says, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there's dew only on the fleece and on the ground, again, not in the, don't want to get into super detail here. And that is what, verse 38, that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, in verse 39, do not be angry with me. So it seems to me he knows he's asking a lot, okay, for this other sign, because he prefaces with it. Don't be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece, but this time we'll do the opposite so I can know it's not some natural phenomenon, I guess, right? It's the opposite thing, so it can't be. There's no, naturalistic explanation for what happened. It has to be God at work. And here's what's amazing to me. It just says in verse 40, and God did so. So again, no, he doesn't berate Gideon. He doesn't say, what the heck is wrong with you? He doesn't say your faith is so weak. He doesn't say whatever. Gideon asks, and God does it. No questions asked. That's pretty cool, I think. It just tells me, again, I think we're getting this portrait of God, and it's this fully orbed thing, right? This is not an anything goes God. This is God that in this cycle of this narrative gave them over to the hand of Midian, who's been oppressing them because of their thorough unfaithfulness, and yet, as he works with people, God is so patient. Right? I'm reminded of that, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. So, and then just a couple minutes in chapter 7. I know I'm going long again already. It's just Bible talking time warp. Judd, you're right when you agree with me. That's all I can say about that. I guess. I don't know. I got to disagree with you about something. So, this is great because, and I don't know. So in chapter 7, when they're getting ready for this battle, Gideon kind of had this, this thing with God, and I don't know. I mean, probably, to be fair, this was probably God's plan all along, but it's fun to think that maybe God's having some fun with Gideon now, with this shrinking down the army way down. I don't know, but it's a fun story, right? So, but catch this: the narrator of the story here in chapter 7 is at times using this name given to Gideon, Jerub-Baal. Let Baal contend with him. So that's so interesting, and there's probably more to think about behind that. But you wouldn't think that the narrator would use that name for him that they gave him, but it's got both. Anyway, his men camped, and the Lord said to Gideon, I'm in verse 2 here, chapter 7. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me, saying, my own strength has saved me. And I think probably this is also a clue of why God chose Gideon, a man who did not have confidence in himself and in his own strength, right? And I think this is an indication that's God's plan all along. I'm looking for somebody who's not overconfident in themselves, so that ultimately his people will learn to be confident in him, right? Not so much self-confidence, but God. It's a little cheesy, right? God confidence. So if if it looks like from the outside, the people can say, we did this. We got a good army here. We're good at this. We're good warriors. Like what we did. We won this. God doesn't want that. So now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 men left. Well, 10,000 remain. So twice as many leave as stay. Weeds it down. So Gideon's probably, what's he feeling? We don't know. Feeling less, whatever, maybe. I don't know. Verse 4, the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Take them down the water, and they do this thing with the way that they drink the water. And so verse 7, the Lord said to Gideon, with 300 men that drank this way, that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So Gideon doesn't, to his credit, right, doesn't do anything in response, but do it. Verse 8. So Gideon sent the rest home with the Israelites, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others, which is a cool thing, because that's the part of how they accomplish this. And I'm trying to wrap up. So, all right, so check this out. Right from that second part of verse 8. Now the camp of Midian lay below them in the valley. During the night, the Lord said to Gideon, get up, go down against the camp, because I am giving it into your hands. Without a break, without a pause, verse 10, if you are afraid to attack. So, whoa, now are we moving away from God saying it and then Gideon, having this exchange of ask for things from God, for God knowing Gideon perhaps and making provision for him in advance. Wow. What a great God, right? What a great provision of God. He's just saying, I want you to be able to have this confidence, in a sense, as you go in. Again, not self-confidence, but confidence that I'm going to do through you what I said I was going to do. If you're afraid of the camp, go down, listen in, and they listen in, and the somebody says I have this dream that involves us getting kind of wiped out. So verse 14 said, his friend said, this can mean nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelites. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands. So if you haven't already, read on at how they did it, how God did it, but God was faithful to them, and Gideon was used by God. So, all right, what do you guys think? Other thoughts, questions? I'm almost 40 minutes in here. I got to stop. Sorry for using up so much time. I just love, I love this stuff. It's such good stuff. It's so rich. If we were sitting in a circle, talking about this, you would see things, you would have insights. Feel free to share those things, except for Judd. You shared enough already. I'm just kidding. I love you, buddy. Thanks for, provoking me and pointing me to some other things there. I really do enjoy and appreciate that. Again, if you guys are watching this later, as many do, leave a thought, leave a comment, leave a question. What do you think about Gideon? What do you think about God? Other things you want me to talk about in the book of Judges tomorrow? Leave those comments as well. All right, guys, have a great night. I'll see you later. Bye.